Welcome to another episode of Trucker Talk. I hope everybody is having a beautiful day. Today, I'm going to talk about grief, the conversations we don't have. So I welcome you all again. Thank you for your time. Please like, share, subscribe, or comment below. Thank you. I appreciate your time. So, why is grief important to talk about? The opening question. What does grief really look like? Is it something we ever truly get over, or we simply learn to carry it? Whew. That's tough for me because for the first time in my life, I'm going to talk about my experience with grief. What I went through, I'm going to break everything down. What is grief? Grief is more than just losing someone to death. Grief can come from losing a parent, a spouse, sibling, or a friend. Divorce or the end of a relationship. Losing a job or a career. Health changes. Losing a dream or future you imagine. Moving away from home. Life-changing accidents or trauma. So, how does grief affect us differently? You got your emotional pain, your anger, your guilt, your regret, your anxiety, depression, loneliness, feeling emotionally numb, difficulty concentrating, changes in sleep and appetite. So I'm going to tell my story before I get back into the podcast. So first time in my life, I had a really good friend, Harold Wayne Sexton. Met the guy in my 20s. We was great friends. We became close. He taught me, and I say he talked me into buying my first home. He broke everything down for me. He said, "Hey, bud, this is what you need to do. You need to do this." So he told me, he said, if you can save up money, practice. This is when I was living with my mom and dad. He said, I want you to save up some money for a year. And, you're ready. I'm going to see if you're ready. So at the time I was working for Coca-Cola, and I remember saving up $1,000 a month. Like I was, paying my bills, giving my parents the rent, which it was a little bit of money they asked for. And I was saving. So I was planning to move out. So I saved up $1,000 a month. So that's $12,000. So I was ready. I told myself I was ready. So he helped me. And also, George, Sean, those also are my good friends. And I'm close to them too. But Harold had helped me go through that process. And I'll never forget the first home that I looked at. And I just wanted to buy something because I was at that point. My son he's like, Dad, I want my own room. Dad, I want my own room. I want my own room. So here I am living with my mom and dad at 23. And my son is like beating at me about getting his own room. So I'm like, okay, I hear you. So the first house that I looked at, George, he come over there in his little HR, he come over here in his HR car, whatever. Man, he had this big flashlight. He knocking on the walls, checking everything. And he's like, man, this ain't it, And Harold told me it wasn't it. But George, he's knocking on the walls, trying to listen for stuff. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And I would never forget that. So the homeowner lady, or not the homeowner, the real estate lady, Janice, she's an older lady. She was dressed, pretty, and she had her high heels on. And the problem with the house was the basement. It had some kind of foundation issues, and they had like a bunch of mold and stuff. So as soon as George and Harold and them looked at it, they said, this ain't it. Me, I was like, nah, I had my $1,000 earnest money, and I was like, I'm gonna put it down on this house because I'm ready to get out of my parents' house. So that house didn't go through. It didn't go well. So fast forward, I looked at this house on Brass Ridge Lane. And I never forget, it was a small house. It wasn't even 1,000 feet. We checked it out. We looked at it. And, Harold was like, Bud, this is you, man. This is a starter home. Bud, this is you. So I'll never forget, I had picked my son up one day. And what I wanted to do was see him, let him get what's the word? A confirmation that this is the house that I wanted to get. So I took him over there and I told him it was somebody else's house. And I said, we're going to stop by blah, blah, blah. And he climbed it. When he climbed that tree, I said, this is it. So I will never forget the day I picked him up, or I met his mom because I was getting him every other weekend. I picked him up and he said, Daddy, where are we going? I said, we're going home. He said, well, grandmama's house is that way. I said, we're going home. So we pulled up to the house and oh my God, he might explain to me now that he's older, his reaction, his whatever he was feeling, but he's like, Dad, he's like, what is it? I said, this is my home. I said, I wanted to surprise you. I said, I bought a house. And so I say this to say, Harold made a promise to me. He said, Bud, as long as I'm healthy and I'm able to do all of these things, I will help you with your home. And when I say he helped me with my home, I don't mean financially. I'm talking about when I had plumbing problems, he taught me, and I would bomb the crawl space because I don't like spiders. I'm not a spider guy. I watch Spider-Man. That's it. I ain't no spider guy. I don't do spiders. So I would always have to bomb the crawl space before I would crawl up under that thing because I didn't want nothing. I would have snakes in my mind, bugs, spiders. Once I bombed it, I was good. So we crawled up under there a couple of times. Well, many a times when I would have a leak, a pinhole leak in my copper pipes, and he showed me how to do the shark bite fitting. And eventually we took the copper out, half of the copper out. I think we replaced it with PVC. Well, I'm saying it right. The PVC, the PEX PVC. I might be saying it wrong, but we replaced it with that. So that saved me a lot of problems when it comes to more leaks because I was getting pinhole leaks. My house was like it was built in the 1950s. So there was a time I had my soffits was somehow the ceiling, the roof was leaking or something. And what I found out, the guy that owned the home before me, he had stapled the shingles down. Somehow he stapled the shingles down and he covered it up real good. When I did the homeowner inspection, they didn't catch it. So I was pissed. So I had to replace all my soffits. So Harold brought all his tools over and we just went through and did one side at a time. And and keep in mind, he was 65 at the time. So he was knowledgeable. He had a house out on the lake. And so he was knowledgeable about a lot of things. So he had the tools, he had the equipment, and he had the knowledge. So he showed me how to, like I learned about fascia board. I learned about, like I said, the PVC piping, the PEX. He taught me how to put up a motion light outside. I never knew anything about electrical. He showed me how to do the electrical. And we painted the outside of my house a couple of times. After that second time, he said, look, he said, bud, if you're going to paint this house again, he said, I ain't help you. But keep in mind, he was older. But I was one of those, like I painted it yellow one time, and then I was like, oh, I got over the light yellow and I painted it gray. And so he helped me paint, and I know he was frustrated because he's older and the sun was beating on him. And so he helped me paint my house. And also, when it comes to just the structure, like I learned a lot from him. So I'm telling this story because that's just giving you an insight on the things that the knowledge and the stuff that I obtained from this man. So, fast forward a little bit. I told him, because he promised me that as long as he was healthy and he was able to do it, he would help me with his house. So I made him a promise. This is what I didn't talk about this. I made him a promise. I said, if you ever go downhill or whatever, I said, I will take care of you as long as I can to help you, as you know, and to keep you from going into a nursing home. So fast forward 2017, I think is when he started going downhill. And I didn't tell my family or nobody this, but I had basically started moving. I had not moved in, but I was staying with him to help him get things done and go to doctor appointments and do all these things. So his health really declined in 2018. So from 2017 to 2019, I stayed with him. But keep in mind, people, I'm still a father, brother, son, a friend, and an uncle at the end of the day. So I was still getting my son every other weekend because that was just what the arrangement was. That's what I ended up with. So I was trying to explain to my son, I said, son, what would you do if you had a best friend? And I was just trying to, not to guilt trip myself or guilt trip him, but I said, if you had a friend that you was looking at, I said, what would you do if you was in a situation? So I didn't want to leave him for dead or leave him to fend for himself because he was always there for me. He always helped me. That's all I think about, like when I remember those times. And also when I'm helping my mother and helping others and doing for other people, I think about the knowledge that he taught me. That way I can help other people and do for other people. So again, I was mowing his yard, taking him to doctor's appointments. And I remember he had a leak in his shower. And I said, bud, he's like, man, I'm gonna have to hire. I said, don't worry about it, man. I said, you showed me how to turn the water off, I call it the guts, take the thing off and replace I think it's a cartridge. He showed me how to do that. So I've done that at my mother's house. I've done that at my new house, and I've done it at my old house. So he showed me all of those things. He encouraged me. He told me, I'll never forget. He said, bud, he said, I want you to have more than what you already have. He said, you deserve it. He said, you're a good man, And keep in mind, I have 4 brothers and a sister. We all do things differently, and that's okay. But I was kind of up under Harold's umbrella. Like I was up under him as far as the knowledge and learning and all those things. So I learned those things from him, and watching him go downhill, watching somebody do all this work. We was out on a lake with my son, riding jet skis, partying, living it up. We went to the clubs. We did all those things. I had a bunch of house parties at my house. This was back in my younger years. Had all these parties. It was beautiful. Well, at the time, I was dealing with things, but I didn't realize it. But I had a lot of parties. We partied all the time. So fast forward to this part, to see him, and like I said, I probably got millions of stories to tell, but watching him go downhill, I never forget, after my second rotator cuff surgery, I had to have rotator cuff surgery in January 2019. So that whole year, because I told y'all before, I had to have left rotator cuff surgery in February on February, or I had to have left rotator cuff surgery because of February the 25th of 2016 because of the accident, the tractor trailer accident that I was in. So fast forward, this is 2019. I had to have right rotator cuff surgery because I had slipped and fell in the trailer. So here I am getting my son every other weekend, still recovering from this surgery and still trying to be a caregiver. So up to this point, I really didn't realize how bad his health was getting because keep in mind, I had surgery in January of 2019. So about September 18th, I say about September, August, September, I was able to do more than what I was able to do in January. So he started having all these health conditions. And like I said, me, I'm being there for him. I'm doing what I need to do, taking care of him, doing this, and that. And it was a different experience because now I'm going to fast forward to when all this hit me. So after September, let's fast forward to November. November, I will never, ever forget this day. This was before the week of Thanksgiving, 2019. He had fell. I told his sister this. He had fell, and I said, man, you need to go to the hospital. So he's fussing at me, going off on me. He's like, I ain't going. So, and if anybody knew Harold, you knew he was stubborn. He's a sexton. He's stubborn. So he did not want to do anything. So I would never forget that. Next morning I got up. I said, Bud, you need to go. He's like, no, I ain't going. And he's fussing at me. So I said, okay. So that next day I called him. I think I got to my first stop. Tried to call him. He didn't answer. Got to my second stop. Tried to call him. He didn't answer. So I called the hospice people. And I said, can you send somebody by there to do a wellness check? The lady went by there and she said, he's laying on the couch. And she said, he just laying on the couch. And I said, what is he doing? She said, he just laying there. And so because he made me his director of associate and I was his power of attorney at the time, I said, go ahead and send him to the hospital. Boy, he was pissed. He's like, oh, he was mad. And so here's the thing that people don't talk about. So this is the week before Thanksgiving. So I go he's in the hospital. And like I said, keep in mind, I'm working at Cisco in Knoxville. I'm working 14 hours a day. I got a friend that's ill. And I'm getting my son every other weekend. So I'm just giving you the big picture. So we in a hospital and he's like, man, he said, they got me. He said, you got somebody here giving me drugs. He's like, they're trying to kill me. And I think that was just some of the medication they had him on. And he's like, Bud, he's like, why'd you put me in here? Why'd you do this to me? And I said, Harold, I'm not doing nothing to you. I said, this is the best place for you. I said, I'm at work. I said, I can't, if you need attention, you need somebody that can attend to you. So I said, this is the best place for you right now, And so he was just like, no. And so he tried to take all his stuff off and try to get out there. And I tell the story, there was a doctor, me and him laugh at it. But he said, man, it was, and I'm not going to say what his nationality was, but he was trying to fight the dude. And I was like, Harold, I said, you can't. He said, man, if he come here, he said, I'm going to punch him in it. I said, you can't do that, man. But keep in mind, he's under this medication. People don't understand unless you're seeing a loved one go through this. You're thinking, oh, they're crazy. They're not crazy. The medication and their state of mind is slipping. So I didn't understand at the time. So I'm like, what is going on with him? I never forget. He's like, I'm mad at you. You put me in here and now I can't get out. That really hurt me. I didn't know how to take that. So fast forward, the days got, I guess to me, they felt longer. I'm working, going to the hospital, going home. And Sean Gallagher, he went up there with me that last night. Well, fast forward. I remember on Thanksgiving. I went over there in the morning. Then I'm going to tell y'all my emotions and my feelings. When I went When I went to the hospital, then I went to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. I was just there. I wasn't excited. I wasn't feeling, and I'm telling y'all, this is when grief started. I was there and I don't even remember. All I remember is being there, leaving, going back to the hospital. And then a week or so later, go back forth to the hospital, back forth to the hospital. December the 3rd, Sean Gallagher, he had stayed the night up there with me. And I remember he had to go to work the next day. And that night we just, if y'all knew Harold, he listened to Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, Hank Williams Jr., CCR, Bob Seger, what's the guy? All those different older things. He got me into the older music. So I would never forget, Sean he got up, he slept on the couch, I slept on another couch, and we just sat there and listened to music, and he got up and went to work. And like that next day, December the 4th, I will never forget. My dad comes walking in there, and I'm sitting here like, my dad, he started talking or whatever, and and then next thing I know, Harold took his last breath like that. I've never seen this before. He took his last breath, and I was just like, wow. The lady come over there. I think the machine started making some noise, and she was just the lady come over there, and I never forget. She come in there and she's like this. And she started crying, and I'm just like, shh. So my dad had come in there, but my dad had came in there the room, and he had said some words to Harold. He spoke to me, hugged me, and then I remember when he turned around, it was like I seen Harold take his last breath. So the machines are going off, or the machine was making a noise. The lady coming there, and she's just, she's just crying, and I'm like, ah. So I'm gonna tell y'all the worst. This is me being honest with myself. That feeling when my dad had walked up to me, he was comforting me, but to me, it wasn't comfort because me and my dad, I love him. He's a great father. We didn't have that type of relationship. So him hugging me and comforting me, it still didn't feel right because he taught us all to be tough. He never really taught us that part about being vulnerable and being emotional. So he's sitting here hugging me, and I'm just like, I really didn't want him to touch me. I know that sounds bad, but that was my feelings at the time, and I'm going to go into why I felt like that. So here's the thing. So after all of that happens, here I am. I'm doing the obituary, and I had to go down to the funeral home to get everything because Harold had already had everything set up. And so it was tough. But the one thing I left out, the toughest thing, my son, Chad Murray, my son's mom, Chad Murray, Leslie, they all come up to the hospital. And I'll never forget, I had Harold's sister and his brother and his Aunt Susie, or I say his Aunt Susie, his brother's wife, had him on three-way, and I let them, having them talk to him on speakerphone and him conversating, or he was just there, But they got to talk to him, and it was just tough. It was tough. So sorry, I'm spiraling, y'all. My bad, but this is touchy. So they talked to him, before he passed, and so now fast forward back to my dad. After Harold passed, Sean went down to the funeral home with me. We're doing the arrangements and this and that. I broke down as I'm doing the paperwork, and Sean had to, he finished like he was just like, "It's okay, bud. It's okay, bro. It's okay." And so the thing that people don't tell y'all about when it comes to grief. So fast forward, this is February. Keep in mind, he died December the 4th, 2019. I didn't check myself in until about February. So, and this is me being honest with myself. I was drinking. I drank wine. I was getting drunk, just trying to fight those emotions, fight those feelings, fight what I'm eh, what I'm dealing with at the time. So I would just stay drunk. And so that's what I did. Come February February 2020, I lost my mind because at that point I couldn't keep running from it. So I checked myself in. And when I tell y'all I checked myself in, I checked myself into a location. It was off of Western Avenue. I left this out. I was losing my mind so bad. I went to Fort Sanders. Had a good friend, Chris Griggs. He was there. And at the time, my son was playing for Allenwick. He was playing basketball. I never forget that night, that Friday night before, I was like, man, I got to do something. I got to do something. So what I didn't want to do is break the news to my son because he had a basketball game. I didn't want him to be worried about me and this, and that. So what I did, I went to the last game, watched him play, and I told him and his mother, I said, look, I'm having a hard time. I'm dealing with this grief. I don't know how to deal with it. So I said, I'm going to check myself in. So I said, don't worry about me. I said, I'll be okay. But when I get out, I'll let you all know how I'm doing. So I went to Fort Sanders. Fast forward, I went to Fort Sanders. And Chris Griggs was there. I told Miss Johnson about it. And he called my dad down there. So my dad come in there and my dad's like, you okay? Everything okay? What's going on? And I said, I'm not doing okay. I said, I'm dealing with this grief. He's like, oh, this and that. I said, it's tough. So I checked myself in. I checked myself into this place. Hold on. So I checked myself into this place. And I'm gonna tell you how it's a humbling experience because when I got there, they took my keys, they took my cell phone, they took my wallet. They said, you don't have no contact to the outside world. The only time we was allowed phone calls was from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. You had 2 minutes. Keep in mind, this facility, it was 5 guys, 5 girls. The guys was on this side, the girls was on the other side. So 8 o'clock in the morning, between 8 and 9 a.m., you had a 2-minute conversation with wherever you, like I would call my mom or I'd call Miss Johnson. I would call them to let them know, hey, I'm okay. I'm doing all right. I'm doing good. So the bump, me, for the record, I've never been in jail. But to me, this felt like one of them experiences because I had 5 guys that was in the same room. We had 5 beds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lined up beside each other. They had so much feet between them. We had 1 bathroom, 1 shower, one, so we all shared the same bathroom and shower. So every day, we got up to ate breakfast, had lunch, and had dinner. And then we had lesson, as we call it, lesson. Then if you was feeling down one day, you could go talk to one of the counselors. I never forget one day I was just crying and crying and crying. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. So I was talking to the lady and she gave me some encouraging words and she listened to me and she said, I understand. And that comforted me. I also had a female friend. I'm not going to say her name. She know who she is if she watched this podcast. She came up there. I love you. I'm grateful for that. And that felt good to have, a friend come up there to visit. But I'm gonna tell you, I felt like I was in jail because uh, because my friend that came up there, and I'm talking about y'all, it was to the time. They was like, shit, I had an hour visitation. And when that hour was up, they said, you gotta go. I was like, hold up. I was like, they was like, yeah, it's time up, time to go. So they was strict. It was strict. So yeah, that was tough. So one of the things I realized is, and some of the guys that I was in there with, they was dealing with more things than I was dealing with. A couple of guys I talked to, I'm not going to say what they was dealing with because I'm just not going to do that. But I realized myself, I was like, man, you're in here for depression, and these other guys have a whole lot more different things that they're dealing with, and you are in here for depression. So that woke me up. It was a reality check. So fast forward, I got myself, I did my 3 days. I got out. I started going to therapy. My first therapist, I don't know why, but he was a black gentleman and he looked just like my father. So I started going to therapy, and I was expressing to him the anger, the resentment, and the things that I had, I guess, against my father. So I went to therapy for like three times, and I got to that point. The last thing he told me was to write a letter forgiving your father, and you can either hold on to it or you can burn it up. Y'all, I held on that letter for years, but I quit going in therapy. I said, I'm going to do things Matthew way. So I got out in the world, drinking, out there chasing what feels good. And I'm here to tell y'all, the alcohol, the sex, it ain't worth it. All it does, it sends you down a rabbit hole. It's not worth it. I've been there. I've done that. So when I was in that hospital and my daddy came and Chris Griggs was there, I never forget my dad telling my sister, he said, go get your brother guns. He said, he's suicidal. He about to kill himself. That pissed me off. I'm like, listen, if I was suicidal and if I wanted to kill myself, I could have already done it. I'm like, I need help. I need the proper resources to help me grieve properly. Like I said, alcohol and the sex didn't work. So yeah, my father, I felt like at that, like I said, my father was raised different. He come from different times. He didn't really know how to, because like I said, he was still growing and learning as a young man. And now that I went to therapy and I see that, I give him grace. I forgive him. He didn't know, but he just knew the things that he was taught. So I'm like, okay, cool. So so I couldn't really go to him as I'm grieving. So let's fast forward. Here we are, 2023. Whew. I don't even remember 2023. Now I'm jumping. My grandmother, she got sick after COVID. She passed away in February of 2021. And so my grandmother was special. She was y'all seen some of the videos I put online. She talked some smack. She talked some smack. And she always, baby, you don't need nobody. You don't need one of them girls to move in and take all your stuff. You don't need, man. She gave me some advice. And the one thing about my grandmama is she cracked me up because I remember when she was staying with my parents, I would sneak her donuts and Cokes. My dad did like, I'm like, Dad, She's 90 something years old. Let her live her life, and I know, but so she would make me some nanner pudding, and I loved her nanner pudding. And she would always say, baby, she would always make, and no offense to I love my siblings, no offense to them, but she would always make me my own nanner pudding. So she would make me my own, and she would make one for the family to share. So she would say, hey, that's Matthew's nanner pudding. Don't touch it. But being her, like we had a great relationship, and I miss her dearly. So I think when she passed away, when it was her time to go, my dad fell down. Like I think grief, because I've never seen my dad grieve, but I think it hit him because it was no longer after when she died. He had a stroke, and so and again they said stroke, heart attack. Because the way they said it, but I think that he was, and it's just my personal opinion, but I think he was dealing with his own grief, but I think he's never dealt with it. So I think when that happened, when his mother passed, it kind of hit him. And I watched him go downhill. So after that happened to him, he was bedridden, and he was in a nursing home, but he was in a coma. He was out for a while before he could open his eyes. And I never forget going to the hospital, and I would talk to him, and I'm like, blink your eyes if you can hear me. So at that point, he was able to do that. And then finally he was able to start talking again. But eventually he was bedridden, and he was at my mother's, at their home. So fast forward to that, he passes away September the 8th. I think it's in September of 2022. So at this point, I'm still grieving Harold, and that's December the 4th, 2019. I'm grieving my grandmother that passed away in February of 2021. And then my dad, he passed away September of 2022. So here I am. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm depressed. I'm everything I didn't know. Nobody told me. So for the record, I drank the year of 2023. I drank that whole year. I'm not ashamed of it because I'm here to tell you this. Hopefully, the way I handle things now, it can help somebody. This story helps somebody. But I drank the whole year of 2023. A good friend of mine, Sean Gallagher, I had a bag full of crown bags. The bags you get when you buy a bottle of Crown, they're different colors. I had all kinds of colors. And Sean was like, and I told him, I said, man, I'm about to make me a quilt. I wasn't making no quilt. I was an alcoholic. I was drinking. I was trying to cover up those emotions, trying to cover up the depression, trying to cover up the hurt. So I say that to say it took me waking up January 2024 when George Shine sent me that message. He said, hey, you want to come to church? And I said, at first I was like, man, screw that. I don't want to go to no church. I'm sitting here drunk. I'm drinking my Crown. And then I said, yeah, I'll go next week. So I'm sharing this story because at the time, Heart and Soul Church was at Bearden High School in the auditorium. I will never forget walking into that church. And that was when I met Pastor Austin Coleman. They make you feel at home. They know you by first name basis. They was uplifting. They was embracing. And I had stepped away from the church years ago. I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not no Bible thumper. I don't act like I'm holier than thou, but I just got back into the church. And like I said, I'm still working on myself, but he said one of my favorite quotes, and it's in the Bible. It says, what shall a man profit if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? That particular Sunday, he was preaching about anxiety, preaching about depression, preaching about, and me at the time, it's 2023, y'all. I just bought me a motorcycle in July. I'm going on the second year, or first year of my pressure washing business. So I got my own business booming. I bought me a motorcycle. The job that I'm at, I was loving it. I was on cloud nine, but it took me to realize money, materialistic things don't mean nothing. If you're not mentally stable, if your mental health is not in check, if you're not rooted in something that's going to be something that's going to help you, it don't mean jack. So when I woke up in January 2024, I was like, what am I doing? Where's my life going? What's my purpose? What is my why? So I started going to therapy in January 2024. It took me a year, y'all, a year. January 2025, I started to learn how to forgive. Nobody told me how to forgive. I can listen to a book. I can Google it. You have to practice these things. So I started forgiving people in my life that I had cut out my life. I learned to forgive. So I started practicing those things that I learned in therapy. So it was tough, but it was a healing process because it took so much weight off of my chest. And so, yeah, it was tough. So here I am, 2026. This is July the 21st. I am a better man, but now I'm about to step back into the grief, what people don't tell you about grief. So one of the things I learned about grief, there is no timeline. Everybody grieves differently. Healing isn't linear. Some days feel normal, others feel overwhelming. Triggers can appear years later. It's okay to laugh again without feeling guilty. So, one of the things that I dealt with after having these 3 deaths happen back to back, as a caregiver, I would have nightmares. Like when Harold when he died, I would wake up, me trying to save him. He's dying on the couch. I was replaying in my head, what didn't I do? Did I do this? Did I do that? And then also, we had them daily conversations. So, and the thing I learned about grief, like the holidays come around, it's tough. Birthdays is tough. All year is tough. But the one thing I learned about grief is you have to grow around it. The grief will always be right here in front of you. It's here. But you got to grow around it. But it's still here. It's how you navigate and go through those emotions and feelings. Because to this day, I can be watching a TV show, and even with my father, like some of the resentment I had, I can watch a movie and it's about a father and a son, and they're just on not bad terms, but they just don't have a great, not say great relationship, but they're at odds. It triggers me about my father. And there again, like I said, I had to learn to allow grace and be forgiven and to go through those things. But grief is tough. It's really tough. And so I didn't realize that I had grieved over Harold for all these years because I never grieved properly. In the beginning, I tried to drink. I tried to cover it up. It didn't work. It didn't help until I got the proper help that I needed. So it's times where, and just like doing things for my mother and helping and doing things for other people, those are the things that reminds me of him and the things that he taught me. Because he's a really great man. And my son would say, yeah, he taught me this. He showed my son how to lay mulch, how to, do the stones and this and that. And my son one day, he had a tiller, so he tilled up my front yard at my old house before I decided to put rocks and stones there. Because I got tired of the landscaping. I got tired of the mulch. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna switch this up. I'm gonna make this a manly house. So that's what I did. But yeah, talking about balancing life with grief, going to work, parenting, paying bills, relationships, celebrating milestones while missing somebody, learning to smile again. That was what was tough for me when I bought when I when I bought this house. Because remember, Earl was there when I bought my first house, and I was talking to his sister. She said, she said that she said he's proud of you. You know, he's proud of you. And I said, yeah. I said, I wish he was here to see it. Which I know he's seen it and he sees it. So that was one of the things that. Another thing that was tough for me. So I was like, yeah, man. I said, I've done it. And if it wasn't for him walking me through that process to buy my first house, I wouldn't have been able to buy this house. Because he helped me build that confidence. Healthy ways to cope. So some of the things I learned is talking with people I trusted. Therapy or grief counseling, prayer or faith, exercise. I used to try journaling, but I stopped, but I need to get back into it. I'm learning now to spend time with nature. Or you can join a support group. Allow yourself to feel your emotions. I always held my emotions back. Always. So here I am being emotional, and it feels good. So supporting someone who is grieving, you have to be present. Listen more than you speak. Don't rush their healing. Check in weeks or months later. Remember important anniversaries. Offer practical help. Avoid saying this. Everything happens for a reason. They're in a better place. You should be over it by now. Don't ever tell anybody that. Instead, say, I'm here for you. I'm thinking about you. You don't have to go through this alone. Grief is love with nowhere to go. It reminds us that someone or something mattered deeply. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry that love forward while continuing to live. So this is my episode of grief. And again, y'all, I had to learn how to get help. Now I talk to people. I talk to more people. I express myself. And those things that I kept bottled up inside, I don't leave it bottled up. If something's bothering me, I say, hey, I call one of my good friends and I just talk to them. They pour into me and they give me some encouraging advice. And so I just hope this story or me giving this testimony, it might help inspire somebody to not shut down, not isolate yourself. You don't want to do any of those things. Go get help. Go talk to somebody. Go speak to a trusted friend. Go to therapy. Find you different groups or even a support group. So, but I didn't know then because I had that mentality of being tough and I wanted to be the tough guy. So, but that was how I was brought up. Now I'm like, you know what? I'm not that tough. I'm gonna get help and I'm gonna do the things I need to do. So grief is always gonna be here. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't get easier. I don't care if that's what people say. Oh, it gets easier over time. It don't. You still feel those emotions. It's still there. You just learn to navigate through those feelings and those emotions. And I don't want to say keep yourself busy. Process them. Process what you're feeling. put a name on what you're feeling and work through what you're feeling. Find you something healthy to do. Find you something healthy in remembrance of that person. Don't turn to alcohol. Don't turn to drugs. That's my personal advice that I'm giving you. I turned to alcohol. It didn't work. I turned to sex. It didn't work. But I'm grateful that I'm out of that place. I was in a dark place. I was angry. I was bitter. I was dealing with all those emotions. No, like I said, nobody explained to me about grief. I didn't know that I was going to go through that after being a caregiver. But now I'm to this day, and I want to leave my legacy, and I want my son, hopefully he can watch this and he can understand why daddy was doing the things that daddy was doing, and why was daddy quiet, why was daddy angry, why was daddy sad, because I never broke that down for him. But yeah, Malachi, I was going through this. I was still trying to be a strong father and still be there and do the things that I needed to do for you. And I can say I'm sorry for not telling you then, but like I said, I didn't know how to articulate that then, because I ain't gonna say I didn't have the knowledge, but I didn't know. I just didn't know. Now I know. And if you watch this episode, you can understand why daddy was acting the way he was, why daddy was depressed and going through all those things. So I'm grateful to be able to talk about it. That's one thing I'm blessed to be able to do. And I'm grateful for all of my friends. I'm grateful for all the support, the people that watch this podcast and watch these episodes. I'm grateful for you all. Thank you all. And I might have went down a rabbit hole on this one, but grief is real. And I've dealt with it. I'm still dealing with it. And you know what I mean? I still deal with it because I cry different times of the day when things hit me like that. I still deal with it, but I'm still moving. I'm still going. Don't let it shut you down. Don't isolate yourself. And thank you all again. I appreciate y'all listening. And like I said, I might have went down a rabbit hole, but I appreciate all you all. And thank you. I hope you all have a good day.
It's the drip from East Strozar.